For me, the key thing after spending most of my career in Africa is really looking for places where people haven't been. Looking for places where that haven't had the exploration attention, because that's where you increase the technical chances of making a discovery. So we believe that this project has the potential to be 2.5 million ounces. We're in it to make money from the shares we own,
right?
And the shares we would buy in the future, and that's important.
Okay.
I think you have to align. You have to align, like you say, you have to align management with the shareholders.
Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We're here today with Hugh Stuart. He's the CEO of Montage Gold. And how are you, sir? You well?
Very well, thank you.
You can tell us all about your new private venture, and you're going to tell us what you're going to be doing. So, and you've also, did you fly in today?
Literally flew in from Côte d'Ivoire this morning.
So, oh my goodness, hot off the press.
Hot out of a very hot and sweaty place.
Okay, so give us a 1 minute summary for the people new to this story.
Yeah, Montage is a new private company, as you say. It's really born out of merging the assets of two companies. From Orca Gold pegged a whole series of assets in Côte d'Ivoire, some of which we actually acquired from Kinross a couple of years ago, which we actually pegged back in the day in the late 2000s as Redback, and we basically put that complete package together.
Right.
And we wanted to spin it out. We wanted to, as a way, because it wasn't really getting any value for the shareholders of Orca. Right. So by spinning it out and ultimately taking it public, we thought we could get better value for it.
Right.
But at the same time, we didn't want to just create a new cash-strapped junior like everybody else. One of the key things for us was to put a new junior in place that had the backing, had a bit more sort of oomph to it than the normal thing, more normal company. So by putting our assets together with a company called Avant, which is another private company with assets in Côte d'Ivoire and Burkina Faso, which is backed largely by the Sandstorm Gold Royalties Group and their sort of related investors, we felt that we would be creating a junior that has a good package of ground in the first place, but also the backing to actually withstand the market and be able to move forward.
Great. Okay, good start, good summary. Thanks very much for that. So you're unusual in the sense that we don't usually talk to private companies, but I like what you've done. You were saying that we need to be ready before we went public, because I think the default position for like Canadian companies, Australian companies, go public and then see what happens. So how long have you been working on these assets? I know Orca Gold, that's a long ways away, wasn't it?
Yeah, some of these assets go back a long way.
Yeah.
The keystone assets that we have, we actually pegged, or I pegged 10 or 12 years ago in Redback.
Right.
When we were working in Ghana and Mauritania, we looked at West Africa and we wanted to try to look at where in West Africa we'd like to do some greenfields exploration. We decided Côte d'Ivoire was it. So we pegged some licenses. We actually made a discovery just before the takeout by Kinross in 2010, but it was never really followed up. So we've always liked Côte d'Ivoire. I think Côte d'Ivoire is the most prospective country in West Africa at the moment.
Well, it's interesting because that's quite the Birimian, quite a big ore body. Seems very big. It crosses many countries. So you say you wanted to go Côte d'Ivoire. You want to go Côte d'Ivoire because you're saying not many other people had been there? Yeah,
I think it's a combination of things. I mean, the usual stat is that there's more Birimian geology, there's more Birimian rocks, which is the right age of rocks to be in Côte d'Ivoire than there are in any other West African country. Right. And that's fine. Not all Birimian rocks host gold deposits. For me, the key thing after spending most of my career in Africa is really looking for places where people haven't been. Looking for places where that haven't had the exploration attention, because that's where you increase the technical chances of making a discovery.
How so?
Simply because nobody's been there. Nobody's run a soil program. Nobody's done exploration.
So how
in
does
these
that
areas.
Increase the chance?
You get the first look at a piece of ground.
Right.
So in the case of most of our permits that we have at the moment, there's been no historical exploration in these areas. On the Morondo permit, where our sort of flagship project is, prior to us arriving in 2009, the permit hadn't been touched. Right. And that increases your chances of finding something significant.
So why more companies not gone into Côte d'Ivoire? I mean, you see them in Ghana, you even see them up in Mali. I think further up towards the north and northwest, it's all happening. But
it's really a function, and the reason probably goes back to the reason why people haven't explored there in the past, is because of political instability. So you go back into the past, there's been civil wars in the 90s, there was problems after the election in 2010, which put people off. People are looking for that stability. Over the last 2 or 3 years, you're starting to see that change completely since President Ouattara came into power.
2 or 3 years, not a long time.
Well,
right?
sorry, probably a little bit more than that, probably 6, 7 years.
Right.
But you're starting to see Côte d'Ivoire really developing with that stability under the new government. So with that, they have a very attractive mining code as well. You're starting to see that activity pick up. You're starting to see the juniors come in, mainly Australian companies at the moment. I think we're the only, if we were to list, we'd be the only purely Canadian junior company that's focused in Côte d'Ivoire.
Okay.
So you're starting to see people are starting to have success. People are starting to put numbers out, starting to build resources on the next wave of projects that's coming through.
Okay, so before we get into the asset and the ore body and what you know and what you don't know, let's start with the team, because with these things, it's very, very important to understand who you're getting into bed with. So a bit of your background and a bit of the rest of the team in terms of relative experience to exploration in this part of the world.
Okay, my background is geology. I'm an exploration geologist. I've spent 30 years, most of which has been in Africa. I've had a couple of short stints outside, but almost the entire career has been spent in Africa. Back in the 90s, I was exploration manager at the Gator Gold project in Tanzania. We took that from effectively the first sample through to the production of 500,000 ounces a year over about a 7-year period. Following that, 2003, I started work for a small Australian company called Redback Mining. We were doing exploration in Ghana primarily. We put the Chirano gold mine into production in 2005. 2007, on the back of a rising gold price, we bought the TSX gold mine in Mauritania. And obviously through exploration, we added a couple of million ounces underground resources in Chirano, and also discovered the Greensias zone in Tasiast, which allowed us to, obviously led to the takeover of the company. Since then, we basically kept the same Redback team together in a new company called Orca. We went to Sudan this time, mainly on the back of that exploration. Nobody's been to Sudan, so it's an intriguing, the geology is amazing, the prospectivity is amazing. And we discovered a 4 million ounce gold deposit. We've completed a feasibility study and are looking to sort of try and develop that project. So on the back of that, also exploring in Côte d'Ivoire under Orca, mainly, as I said, because it came back to the fact that we really like the geology of Côte d'Ivoire.
Okay, so you've got a strong geological team.
Yep.
Track record in Africa, exploration and building it through to production.
Yep.
So who's backing you who's on the money side of things?
Well, on the other side, in terms of the management, we've also got Adam Spencer, who's comes from the Sandstorm side of things, which speaks to the backing. Obviously, pretty much Adam and myself and Glenn Kondo, the CFO, we're a very small team running it.
Right, that's the operational team.
That's the operational team.
Right.
In terms of the major shareholders, from the Orca side, Orca owns 45% of Montage. Our major shareholder is Lucas Lundin, and obviously we've been working in companies that have been dominantly owned by Lucas for a while. And again, that was important to us. When we went to raise money a few months ago to start Montage, Lucas's involvement was important to us because it gives us that backing, it gives us that distinguishes us from some other companies.
Opens a door.
Opens the door.
Yeah.
But again, on the other side of things, from the Avant side, having Sandstorm Gold Royalties as a major shareholder, and also some of the backers and some of the founders of Sandstorm involved, gives us that ability to raise money. We just raised just over $8 million as part of the process to start Montage. We were actually only looking to raise 6, but we were oversubscribed even at this stage.
Right. What were people buying into?
I think they're buying into the premise that we do have a good management team. That Côte d'Ivoire is a very good place to explore, that has become politically stable over the last few years. And the fact that we are able to sort of, as you said, to take projects through, the slightly cheesy strapline of the company is discover to build. But that is very, that is actually what we're about. I mean, we're not in this just to build resources and just flog the shares and ramp the share.
Well, so let's talk about that. Okay, again, I do want to get onto the assets.
Sure.
But I'm always intrigued with what's going on in the minds of the directors and the board, etc. So the business plan was what? You picked up some assets which you're familiar with from Orca days and even Redback days. I mean, it begs the question, why didn't anyone do anything with them back then?
Yep.
Right. So why don't we start with that? And then tell me what the plan is today. You've got a business plan in your mind.
Sure.
Where's this thing going? Discover to build.
The first part of that question is, why hasn't anybody done anything before? Mainly because Kinross were so busy exploring around and developing Chirano and Tasiast, I think.
Right.
The sort of regional greenfields exploration outside of those main assets was less of a priority.
Right. So there was a time that it wasn't a case that they didn't think they could get something interesting out of this. It just,
I think, and different geologists have different views of different things.
Right.
So, but from my point of view, those assets were always good.
Okay.
They are in an area that has multiple gold showings. There's lots of smaller projects that are starting to build into that area. So, in my view, they missed the trick.
They could be. So we'll come back into that. So again, what's going on up here?
The business plan is ideally to build a mine, is to discover and develop a sizable gold mine.
Okay, so let's bring that time horizon down, because everyone says that, okay, 10 years out. But now, the next year, the next 2 years, okay, you just raised some money, 8.3, you had a little bit more money in the treasury than that. It says in here 11 million, I'm sure it's a little bit less than that now. But so what are you going to be doing with it? It's a lot of money for an explorer.
Sure,
It's
great. It's great, yeah, exactly. Right? No, for the first time, we've actually, all this sort of history with Côte d'Ivoire, we've actually got a good run at it now.
Yeah. So
tell us about that. The thing with the company, we've got 4 issued permits in Côte d'Ivoire, and we have a series of applications.
Good.
So we have plenty of different assets to go to. One of the Avant permits, Wendene, has received a lot of exploration. There's value in that, which we may look to to joint venture out at some stage. The focus of the company, and I think the key with junior companies, is that you do have to remain focused. So the focus for the moment is Morondo and the Coney discovery that we made a couple of years ago.
Right.
It's a very early, despite the fact that history goes back 10 or 12 years, it's a very early stage discovery. The resource is just over 1 million ounces, 1.2 million ounces.
What sort of grades?
The grade's just over a gram, and that's a key to the part of the strategy. So it's an early stage project. It's only received until a few weeks ago, it's only received about 18,000 metres of drilling, which in the scheme of things is a very small amount of drilling. Dominantly RC drilling, which is the sort of hammer style drilling where you don't really get any core, you can't really see a lot of geology. So our strategy is that Morondo could be the basis of a mine, of a mine.
Okay, so it's the start of something. You've got a resource, million ounces, good. But what else do you know today about you've been there a while now and historically? So what else do you know that's giving you confidence?
We know that Côte d'Ivoire has a good mining code, which is a good place to develop a mine. We know that we have a deposit with good metallurgy. We've tested that already. Very early
what does
on.
that tell you?
Basically, that we know that we can extract a high percentage of the gold. In this case, around 90% of the gold from the rock. We also know that it's relatively low grade. The grade is just over a gram. It's perfectly amenable to open pit mining. It's got a very low strip ratio, which means we don't have to take up too much waste to mine the ore. It's very easy mining if the rock isn't very hard, so it's very easy to process, very easy to deal with. But at the same time, it is low grade. So that's very much part of our thinking. So the strategy as we go into the next year is probably twofold in Morondo. The first thing is to demonstrate that the size potential of the project.
Right.
So we believe that this project has the potential to be 2.5 million ounces.
Right, so a lot more drilling required.
Well, that's the thing. We don't really, because of the second aspect to it, we don't really feel like we need to do all of that drilling.
Okay.
So what we want to do at the moment is do a small amount of drilling, some deeper core holes, to demonstrate that premise is real, to demonstrate that resource could be 2 to 2.5 million ounces.
Okay.
Because the second aspect of Morondo is that it is a gram. So the second part of the thing is we need to find grade. we need to develop either some grade within the deposit in some cross-cutting structures that we're working on at the moment, or we need to find other prospects within a haulable distance, say 40 or 50 kilometres to that deposit, to make that development project real. So there's no point in us drilling out, spending a lot of our $10 or $11 million drilling out that resource until we've perhaps ticked a couple of other boxes.
Okay.
So for the moment, we want to demonstrate that it's 2.5 million ounces, and work hard on those other things. Work hard on developing and discovering other prospects that can actually bring in a higher grade feed, which makes all the difference. They say in mining, grade is king, and it's king. If you add 200,000 or 300,000 ounces of 2 gram material to a 1 million ounce of 1 gram ore body.
So just explain that to me. So it's low grade at the moment. So you know it's just over a gram. It's pretty typical, somewhere between a gram and 3 grams. So how do we find more of the 2 and 3 gram type stuff in this Birimian we've got?
Basically, just doing the same sort of thing, but looking for every gold deposit has higher grade parts to it.
How do you do that in a meaningful way? You're going to go public.
Yep.
So I've seen lots of different strategies in West Africa, okay, where people come at different ways of saying to the market, we know what we're doing, just give us the money, it'll be fine. So you're saying we don't need to do, drilling's not necessarily core to us. We don't necessarily think that's the way to go and prove out a resource of 2.5 million ounces.
Yep.
So how do you do it?
We don't need to do the sort of 2.5 million ounces at a gram. We'll do some basic drilling. So what we really need to do is do the drilling on some higher grade targets and to bring those up. Okay. Because if we can do that, then we know.
Great. I was just trying to understand what you meant by it's key to our strategy is the low grade. Okay. What you're saying is we know it's going to be roughly a gram everywhere. We've got to go and find this 2 and 3 gram stuff.
Yeah,
which is
if we can find, and you don't really have to find a great deal of it. Yeah. We've noticed with the project in Sudan, 200,000 or 300,000 ounces at a higher grade makes a huge difference to the economics of a project. Okay. So our strategy is very, as I said, is very focused. We're not going to just drill this resource out because we can drill the resource out because we've got lots of money. We're going to be very focused about how we spend that money. Okay. We know there's a pathway to we know what we need to be able to find or to define a development project in this location. Okay.
So what is the resource risk then using for this strategy?
I think given the location, I think it's moderate. It's not high. The resource we've got at the moment is pretty solid. We use the same guy to do the resource calculations that we've used for a long time, going back to the Redback days, who's a very conservative resource modeler by nature. So I'm comfortable with that. There's a few other things, we'd like to look at potentially a bit of consolidation in that district. Right. I think that's another problem when you see with a lot of mining projects. If you could consolidate a few things, it makes it a lot easier, but people are very much tied to their own project. So that's perhaps another aspect of the strategy that we want to look at as well. Okay. Because that part of Côte d'Ivoire is starting to develop. There's a few discoveries. You have Rox Gold, about 80 kilometres to the south of us. We're directly along or adjacent to a Barrick Endeavour joint venture area with a couple of small resources on it, and then to the north you've got more Barrick and Resolute. Actually now they've taken out Toro, so I think a bit of that consolidation as well might, if we could affect some of that, might also make a difference.
And what's the surface land use at the moment?
It's mainly agriculture, cashew farming, cashew nuts. Yeah. But again, as in most of West Africa, we do an awful lot of work to make sure that the communities where we live and work are happy. So we've done a lot of investment in providing water wells. We've drilled water wells in the 2 main villages. We've provided new school buildings. We support the local hospital and the local schools. Okay. Because you can't, they call it social license, but you can't build a mine in West Africa without having the support of the local people. Absolutely,
especially if it's very little understood. You're saying there's not a lot of mining going on in the country.
No, it's you've got 2 or 3, 4 mines in Côte d'Ivoire at the moment. So it is something. They've generally been a more of an agriculture-based economy in the past. Yeah. But I think over the next while it will change.
It's an important thing to discuss because the number of CEOs we talk to who are dealing with rioting or artisanal miners, or all sorts of encroachments into the permitted area, because people don't understand what they can and can't do, and what in fact you're doing there. Why are you on their land?
Well, that's the thing.
Right.
I mean, we do have a history going back, obviously a few years in this area. Ivory Coast is not strange. It's different to a lot of West African. And the people generally, they live in large villages and commute to their fields every morning. So we're most of the resources under agriculture, but we're drilling in there at the moment. We compensate. We work with the locals. We obviously employ a lot of the local people and buy a lot of goods and services in the local community.
So just on the ore body itself. Okay, you telling me you kind of got a good idea of what you're looking at, and it is low grade. How are you using this money to go and chase these slightly higher grade ores?
It's generally it's just sort of basic, methodical, systematic exploration,
right?
Prospecting. Soil geochemistry, soil sampling, so you lay out a grid, and we've just come across a new area recently where one of the local villagers told us there was a couple of artisanal miners working in an area, so we went and had a look at that, and that's actually developing. We've run a soil grid around it, and we'll do some trenching, we'll do a little bit of shallow, what they call air core drilling or RAB drilling, which is shallow, cheap, easy drilling, doesn't cause a lot of damage to the agriculture.
Right.
So we'll do a little bit of that. But again, I think one of the things with exploration is not to really be. You might have a program. We don't really lay out a program for the whole year. We will change the program quite regularly.
So with that, again, let's come back to the original question. It's like, how do you spend $11 million or whatever the number, $10 million over the next year, 2 years? How long do you think it's going to last you?
Depends on our success, to be honest. I think if we're
successful,
we'll drill a lot more holes. Yeah.
Right, or you don't. You got to work out what's your was it? I've forgotten your strap line already.
Discover to build.
Discover to build. So if we're discovering to build, then the plan is to get all the information and data you need to be able to tell financiers that you're good for it, and we're gonna build, right? So $11 million gets you how far along that line?
I think the ideal thing would be we develop at a bit of grade. We show that the resource is 2.5 million ounces on the main deposit. We develop a couple of satellite deposits with a small amount of drilling. Once we've got that, it gives us enough confidence to go into a preliminary economic assessment, a PEA. So we drill off an inferred resource, which doesn't actually take too much drilling given the nature of the ore body. The good thing about the size and grade of Morondo, or the size of Morondo, is that it's we've developed 1 million ounces with only 18,000 meters of drilling. So to drill that out, to drill a slightly bigger inferred resource.
So what's the time frame here?
So probably over the sort of 6 to 9 months of 2020.
Okay.
If we can tick a couple of those boxes, we'd like to have ourselves effectively with a PEA in hand, with a positive PEA in hand by I would say third quarter next year.
Right. So relatively quick.
If we can tick those grade boxes.
But no one's going to go and raise money off the back of a PEA, are they?
No, you want to have a few other things in place.
Yeah.
The thing, unfortunately, is one of the I won't say downsides of exploration, but once you get into that PEA, then you're into the PFS, then you're into the feasibility study. You get into the grind of that, and the attraction of a gold stock reduces because you're just doing the same thing.
So
it's really a question of
peaks and troughs,
of keeping the news flow going, keeping the exploration of new areas going, to try and improve the.
But if you're private, you want to go public, why? Surely, if you're going to get into production, is there a conversation, or is there a thought ever of stay private?
There is, but really one of the things the aims here was to really develop the value for the Orca, or for the shareholders, both of Avant and Orca.
Right. So they're looking for an exit.
We want to sort of crystallise some of that value for them, because they weren't getting or aren't getting in terms of the Orca story at the moment. So that was part of the argument, and I think we think it's probably easier to find capital as a public company to be able to develop something significant in West Africa, and especially in a country like Côte d'Ivoire that's popular.
Yeah, okay. So that's given us some sense of time frame. Have you made any announcements or declarations about when you go public?
The idea, we're talking probably Q1, Q2 next year, depending on, reasonably.
And what do you have to do to ensure that's a successful IPO?
I would like to think that we can do the two things that we talked about. Demonstrate that we've got a 2 million ounce ore body, and then find a couple of high grade satellites which change the economics of things.
6 to 8 months, there's another million and a half ounces.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
So with that, and a combination of those things really shows that we actually have a mine, and that there is a serious project here. And I think if you start sort of throwing in a couple of those regional or sort of district scale things, a bit of consolidation, starts to change that picture even more positively.
It does if you start to firm out how you're going to go about doing it, and that's you give us some clues today about some of your thinking there. With a million ounces, you've got enterprise value of what you typically 40 odd million. Yeah,
probably. I think our valuation at the moment would probably be a bit lower than that.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, exactly. I mean, I think if we can push it up to a couple of million ounces, and we can show that upside from some other things,
right?
Perhaps a bit of consolidation as well, then you really start to see that there is a serious mine at the end of it.
Okay. And what's your thinking? I need to build up the ounces to a certain level. What do you think?
I think we need to demonstrate that it could be
2.5 is fine, but you stop there and say, right, now let's work to get this thing to production. Because if you look at Rox Gold, you look at Cardinal, similar, and they've got very different business models, very different valuations, and because they had very different approaches. You got a Rox Gold who went early, getting into production, produced the cash, was allowed to make an acquisition, I think, from Newcrest or Newmont, one of them. Newcrest. And then we've got Cardinal, I think, no, we need 3 million, we need 5 million, we need 7 million ounces, and that's their model.
Yeah.
So I think where are you?
I think you very much depends on the asset. Given Cardinal's asset, relatively low grade, you've got to go big. You've got to have a high throughput through your process plant to be able to generate the ounces to generate the economics.
Right.
On the Rox Gold side, probably a higher grade, lower thing. Probably, there's differences in that.
Right.
I think if you've got a strongly economic project to start off with, you start through the process of studies.
Yeah.
But at the same time, again, you don't want to stop exploration. So you always want to make it better.
Okay.
And once you've, the classic line is the best place to find a gold deposit is next to a gold deposit. So if you have a gold deposit, then just continuing to explore, continuing to develop the geological ideas around that gold deposit is often a good way to find answers.
Okay. So why you? Why not one of the other 1 million ounce plus companies in the region?
I would say first the geology in Côte d'Ivoire. Obviously lots of different companies working in Côte d'Ivoire, but I do think it is the most prospective country in West Africa, and I think the geology is the basis for everything. You can't do anything unless you have the right geology. I think the second thing would be the team between myself, Adam, people like Rick Clark on the board, Kevin Ross, who used to be the COO of Redback. We have a team that is serious about what we're doing, but also can actually do what we say we do, which is discover to build. We don't really have any.
I think investors want to hear discover to create value.
Yeah,
right?
I would say that's probably the same thing.
Not always for shareholders.
Not always for shareholders, but I mean that's we are all significant shareholders as well. I think that's perhaps
how much does management hold?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's probably 4 or 5%. I know Rick's probably got about between him and Lucas, they've probably got about 6 or 7% of the company.
Yeah.
But we've all put money into the various fundraisings, both for Orca and for Montage.
Right.
So we are also shareholders, and that's also very important to us. So creating, when we say discover to build, I think creating value along the way, and the reason we're doing Montage in the first place is that value creation, because the assets that we believe are strong in Côte d'Ivoire weren't getting any value in Orca. So there was no point leaving them in Orca. By doing this, we think that's a good way of, ultimately, when we do go public, of giving value to the Orca shareholders.
Okay. And so when we see this prospectus in Q1, Q2, whenever you pull the trigger, press the button, when we're looking at how the directors and the board is remunerating itself, what are we going to be reading?
Well, I hope.
How much do you believe in this project is the question I'm actually asking.
I'm biased because this is my project.
Good, take it all in shares.
Yeah,
brilliant.
I mean, this is the Morondo project. Is my project. I picked the license 10 years ago.
Right.
I've been involved in a lot of things that have gone that have gone well, and we've made decisions to buy things.
Yeah.
But I very rarely have actually said go and peg a license there, and this is one of those. I pegged that license.
I know, but what are we going to read in this prospectus? So people coming in and going, right, this team sound great. They've been there, they've done it before. They know the area. It's prospective territory. Sure. How much do you believe in it? It's going to be a reflection of how do you remunerate yourself? Is it going to be a bunch of cash and a little bit of upside when things go right or they go wrong?
I think
we've seen, it's been a lot of that in the press recently. Right?
No, exactly. I mean, we get paid. I think I'm the only person. No, actually, I think 75% of my salary is from Montage. I still do work for Orca, but I think we're also. And I think that goes the same for all the executives. We're all split between other jobs to keep the costs down. But no, I think we're moderately paid. I don't think we're at the top end at all.
And that's going to be the case going forward. You're saying we're going to take the upside because we believe what we can do. We're going to deliver it, and we're going to remunerate ourselves in line with shareholders' expectations. Is that the idea?
Yeah. Well, as being shareholders, we're not in it just for the salary.
Right.
We're in it to make money from the shares we own.
Right.
And the shares we would buy in the future, and that's important.
Okay.
I think you have to align. Like you say, you have to align management with the shareholders.
Yeah, it's one of those things we hear a lot of talk about, and management say it, they don't do it.
Yeah.
And it's very nice, and we have interviewed a lot of management recently who have done that. They say, we actually don't take any shares, any cash.
Yeah.
We take it all in shares because we think this thing is absolutely going through the roof. So very nice, right? But it's just a conversation we like to ask.
No, I think it's a
shareholders get a view of how confident you are in what you've got, right?
No, exactly. I would agree with that.
Beautiful. Hugh, that was a great introduction. Love it.
Thanks very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, please click the button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also catch us on our website, cruxinvestor.com, and Cruxcast, our podcast series. Plus, most days you can catch us on LinkedIn and Twitter. We'd love getting your feedback, so please keep that coming, and we'll speak to you again soon.